Depending on when this video goes up, it's either just before or right on the nose for the 1 month mark for Modern Warfare. Aside from the fact that I felt like a month flew by, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this game. A lot to discuss and get vocal about, but I also think admittedly there's a bit of praise that we can't overlook either. Today, I want to break down the good and the bad from what we've seen so far in the first month of Modern Warfare's main year of support, and give you my review thus far now that we have everything out in the wild. Let me know your thoughts below, and if you're new, maybe considering that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. But that said, let's get into it. Like I said, there's good and there's bad. I'm sure that there's a lot of built-up frustrations over the past month, and we'll get to those in a second, but I also don't think it's fair to write off the entire game when we do have some things that are progressing the standard for what COD may be in the future. I honestly believe that this is the first game that's really innovative of the franchise for quite some time. Every year we usually hear that word, innovative. Others like visceral are always thrown around and present, as it's the cliche of the presentations each year with reveals, but I think that Modern Warfare actually has proven itself to be the most innovative as of recently. Things like crossplay, while not just starting to be an industry standard in the last year or so, given the exclusivity deals that we had seen between PlayStation and Microsoft in the past decade, if you would have told me back in the main year of support for Call of Duty World War II that I'd be playing with my friends on Xbox or PC soon with COD, I genuinely wouldn't have believed you. That does absolute wonders for not only the gaming community at large, and it's fantastic to see at its core levels here with Call of Duty. Sure, there could be some drawbacks, but on a purely holistic level, it's a positive to me. Not to mention the fact that for the most part, exclusivity has been almost all phased out. With the exception of Survival, which doesn't have much to offer to begin with, there really isn't any exclusivity this year. Everyone gets everything all at the same time, and free no less, which is also astonishing. When you compare just recent years to now, we have free maps and on a seemingly increasing regularity and basis compared to in years past, an all-or-nothing all-access pass that hurt the player base as time progressed, fracturing lobbies into those that didn't have DLC and those that did, as well as a steep price tag that came along with it, and then years before that, just individual map packs that again did the same thing with fracturing lobbies. But free DLC is an absolute win. And like we mentioned, it seems like we're getting more and more on a frequent basis, well more frequent than what we've seen in years past now at seemingly a bi-weekly drop schedule. Further innovations that are just baffling to consider is the likes of Groundworth 32v32, and still the rumor of expanding that even upwards of 50v50 and possibly further with coming maps and DLC. That's actually crazy. That's ambitious as hell for who this game is, Call of Duty. Spec Ops as well, while it definitely has its own pitfalls, and we'll come to that in a short bit with the critical review portion, Infinity Ward strive to make it its own world, not just a few missions. Gunsmith, that's another awesome thing that's perplexing to me, the amount of depth that we see with each weapon to create seemingly an infinite amount of weapon customizations that you could ever dream up. That's all pushing the boundaries, and that's all trying to innovate, and that's something that I can absolutely respect. Additionally, there's other things like plenty of direct paths to content so far. When the mission teams work, they're absolutely an awesome idea. Sure, I kind of wish they had passive progression on so that you could naturally work towards multiple without having to choose just one, but hey, I'm not gambling away my in-game or real-life currency for a chance at a variant that I'd want. That's awesome. We're also told in the future that even more will have direct paths to content like full-blown weaponry, and sure, we may see blueprints in the shop to be introduced at a later point, but from what we're told so far, every base weapon will be absolutely free and obtainable via in-game playtime, which is a fantastic step compared to where we were just a few months ago. All of this is great, and again, I respect the hell out of the team for making this possible and continuing to build upon these positives. But at the same time, while we can't deny that there's been good done for the game and the franchise with this title, there's also so much we can't just sweep under the rug and pretend like everything's fine. To preface this, I think that truly, I love this game fundamentally. I think mechanics and gunplay are some of the best that we've seen in years, and I think that it looks and feels brilliant, but there's certainly enough that frustrates me to no end and burns me out way quicker than normal. Hence why I don't even know when this video will actually be up, like we mentioned in the intro. I'm literally away from all things right now, just recuperating and just not trying to burn out when I made this video in advance. And the frustrating part is that, one, this is the earliest that I've ever done this with any COD title to my recollection, and two, it's not even the first time that I've done it this year, where I just need to take a full step back and take a break from everything. I did it as well about a week after launch and just didn't play for a week. I think right from the start, right from launch, it just felt weird, like, wait, is this it? because when we jumped on, it was a little different. And if you're not like me, you probably didn't jump right into Ground War when it was introduced on, say, day 2 or 3 or whatever it was. You probably felt a little shortened because of how little 6v6 maps there were. Not counting that since they added Shoot House, or the night variations of it, there were only 6 maps built for 6v6 play at launch, and for comparison, 2v2 was a nice addition, but it was a niche one at that. It had 7 maps at launch. What a majority of players will jump into had less content than even, say, a grudge match style game mode. I'm all for 2v2, but that's not really right to me. The thing is, though, it still persists even today. I definitely think that Shoot House was a great addition, maybe even the best map in the game, given it's small, it's tight, and it's all action-packed, like COD primarily is, but that's still only 7 for the main 6v6 maps, again, not taking into account the night variations. And I really don't mean to take away from the development of Modern Warfare. There's 4 other maps that are 10v10, which, speaking of which, we still haven't seen a Nia Palace since the first week of the game, since it was rightfully removed from the 10v10 playlist, and we had 2 Ground War maps, so at launch, sure, we had 12 larger maps and 19 total, including Gunfight, but it's reminiscent of what World War II did, where it was a good amount of maps in total, but it was spread out across too many variations of play. World War II is notorious for its amount of launch maps, but that's because war was a thing and they considered those maps as standard maps as well. So hopefully with Season 1 we get a substantial amount of maps to equal things out for all those that choose to play however they want, but at launch even it seemed just off. Additionally, since Spec Ops' launch, while we've mentioned it was awesome and ambitious in its own right to make its own world, it's also either been legitimately broken or too stupidly hard for the common player. With infinite spawn waves of enemies and spawn points in areas that you could have literally just cleared and gotten shot in the back immediately, it becomes something that is meant as a passive way to chill out and have some fun, but then quickly changes into a sweat fest, almost as sweaty as like a COD tournament. So with the game consistently being bugged in Spec Ops, it's frustrating for players that want to give that a try even. Modern Warfare is 1 month in and we've seen a solid number of title updates and hotfixes to date, just under 10, assuming that none drop between when this video goes up and when I recorded it shortly after update 1.09 came out. But while it's great to see the support continue in the constant stream of fixes, we also haven't been seeing a ton of fixes that stay. I only know the intricacies of the development scale on a broad sense, and only because I know some of these people at the studios like Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Sledgehammer, and Raven, so I can't pretend to have all the answers. I'm well aware that tinkering with code is like playing with a skyscraper-sized Jenga tower, where you replace one line, or either maybe say 1, 1, or 0 in some cases, and the entire thing could topple. But when we've had bugs persisting like the camo challenges not tracking, and officer challenges not tracking for a month, I just become increasingly confused as to what's happening and how the same bugs, when mentioned that they're fixed, still keep slipping through the cracks and still persist as broken. Killstreak glitches are another thing that have persisted through numerous passes and fixes and so on, and other things alike. I just feel like that we should be past these things by now, and I think that these constant bugs mixed with the fundamental design flaws that favor the lesser skilled players, it pushes a lot of players away. I know that people that I've known who have never really been too distraught by the game, they kind of just go with the flow. They never really cared if they get stomped or they're the ones giving the stomping. And many of my longtime supporters, even here on the channel, the same sentiment applies, that it's just not working right now. They're holding out that hope for that overhaul, and whether or not that comes, we have absolutely no idea. But from the beginning, even pre-launch, about how they didn't want to make lesser skilled players have a bad time, but they also didn't want to have better skilled players have a bad time. You can't really have it both ways. You can't design a game with things like where tanks persist that are literally free kill streaks and take 0 skill to use, but you can kill somebody on a 20 kill streak and expect the player who prides themselves on getting gun streaks to have a good time. You can't have both of them having a good time at the same time. The problem I've been somewhat vocal on, and what others I know feel the same about, is this game has an ungodly amount of potential. It just needs some right adjustments. It just hasn't hit that stride. And I know from an artistic vision, a creative and developmental standpoint, you want to shake things up. Doing the same exact thing over and over and over again is boring as all hell. You want to make things new and refreshing, but the franchise and the audience have their own way of seeing Call of Duty, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But at some points, those creative introductions clash with that sentiment and that thought that people have about Call of Duty, and it's like trying to push a cube through a circular hole. No one's going to have a good time then. On top of that, the things like spawns, the hit reg, and server inconsistencies, with private matches dropping down to 12 Hz refresh rates, allowing for some weapons to quite literally register 2 shots in one server update, There are those things that desperately need attention first and foremost that could make this game the game everyone wants it to be. And don't get me wrong, that's a fucking hell of a task. One thing that I certainly do not envy. And yes, sure, I'm just that jackass that sits here behind my computer and plays the game and talks about it. No one's ever gonna find the right key to this. No one's ever gonna find the right answer. There will never be a day, as long as any of us are alive, where an update drops or a game as a whole drops and everyone's like, you know what? This is exactly what I wanted. And no one chimes up with anything that they don't like. That will literally never happen. But the least that I think that we can see whenever we talk about all these issues at hand, all these things that are just plaguing the community and what are bothering the hell out of people, is just a little bit more communication when it comes to these issues in the future. I've been through the ringer with the legal ramifications, and I understand that sometimes they literally cannot say anything, and I understand that. But even just something in the way of a general, we hear you, we'll keep you updated, or like, this is why we're doing this, that's better than nothing. For example, the big update that came on Friday was, by all regards, a big update. It was 13 gigabytes. I think statistically speaking, or I guess data size speaking, it was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, that we've seen so far. It changed a lot in terms of bugs and helped the game in some fundamental aspects so that bugs didn't pop up, but it wasn't the big update that everyone had gotten their hopes up for. I think instead of labeling it publicly as the big update, it could have been a little bit more clearer so people weren't let down on what was coming when it did. There's plenty of stuff that could be said about that. For example, I think that even if they addressed the topic of skill-based matchmaking, it literally told people the fact that it's not their product and matchmaking is something that the company called Demonware does. It's a Demonware situation. They have no control over it. It would at least clear up or at least redirect the frustrations instead of just staying silent. It would give people more of an understanding instead of just, hey, it has to be there because they're not saying anything. I think if they even tackled head on some of the complaints about footsteps, dead silence, and other things, and even if it's not the information that people want to hear, it'd be an explanation no less, and then we'd have an understanding behind the reasoning. The silence is just what speaks the loudest in some cases, but unfortunately, not in the best way. Ultimately, 1 month in, do I enjoy this game? Fundamentally, yes. I enjoy this game and have a blast with it outside of the playstyles that are encouraged by the way the game was built. For example, I played a ground war match the other day where literally no one on the enemy team was moving out of head glitches or mounted in windows. And I think it was Zach or Immortal who typed in the game chat, imagine paying $60 to not use your left thumbstick. And someone replied, well, the game makes you play like this. That stuff's the problem. I think that if we had the adjustments, that we had some of the fundamental changes, and then of course the fixes to the problems that we have at hand currently, if we had some of those areas of focus tackled and a bit of communication, this game could truly be stellar. I think that right now, again, if you take out the BS and you take out the bugs when they arise, it's a really fun game and I really have a good time with it. The gunplay, the mechanics, the movement, it's all solid, but it's also undermined by the cheap stuff, and that no matter how great those are, the complaints of what needs to be fixed will far outweigh the positive. I'm an optimistic person, so I'm remaining hopeful for the future. Maybe that overhaul does come. Maybe season 1 is when we see that introduced. We don't know just yet, but we'll see what happens here in the future. That said, that's where we're going to wrap it up. That's been my review 1 month in. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. What do you enjoy, not enjoy, or anything in between about this game? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding any of it. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, wherever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.